The 5AA Sports Show with the top team in town, Stephen Rowe and Chris McDermott.
And a good afternoon. Welcome to the 5AA Sports Show. Rowey and Bone with you until 7. Crows again disappointing. Lost to Richmond. Is that curtains or there's still only one game out of the 8? And Port Adelaide, a terrific win over GWS, and they are only percentage out of the top 8. So we'll speak to Andy Ottens from the Crows, Port's Chad Wingard, Robbie Walls. But as always on a Monday, your calls. Get interactive now, 8223 0000. Get straight on the blow. We'll go straight to you. Or you can text us on 1999 1395 Bone.
Stephen, the Crows were disappointing. It's time for some home truths, I think, down there at West Lakes over the next 10, 12 days before their next game. It's the Gold Coast. It's up on the Gold Coast. It's another tough one and then a really tough month after that. Just gut feel says It's time to look in the mirror, sit down with each other and work out why they are not playing as well this year, pure and simple.
Well, they lost to Sydney by 77 points, now to Richmond by 38. So are they half as good this week or half as bad? The Richmond loss for me was worse. I'll tell you why. All week they talked up a response. All week they said losing is not an option, yet they mirrored that Sydney performance. In all the KPIs, they mirrored it, yet lost by 30-odd points. Richmond, blind Freddie and Benny Barbecue could have told me there were two teams out there on the weekend. We called the game. One was more desperate than the other, and we needed the Crows to be more desperate than Richmond. But, Bone, they weren't. And then the coaching. Delidio, talk to me.
Well, that was the one that you were on all week, all game, and then certainly after the match as well. They ignored him and gave him not just space, but 10 metres, 15 metres, 20 metres, and by the time he'd had 10 touches and it was half-time, it was nearly game over.
He had 18 to half-time, 5 inside 50s, but more than 10.
It was a great performance. They're getting a lot wrong this year. I mean, again, they are getting a lot wrong. A lot has happened. They are not as focused as they were from the coaching panel to the playing group. They are not on the edge like they were last year.
Yeah.
And
we'll
they
get
need to own up and face it.
Because you asked Rory a question on that, but we'll get to that. Tackling has been a problem all year.
Yep.
They've been training for it, they can't do it. And it's causing a lot more problems because of it, the method around the ball. Their decision-making and skill level, since Walker's gone down, they're now ranked about 16th. Have a look when Walker went down. Obviously, they got confidence forward of centre to go to Walker. They don't have him now. Okay, that's an excuse.
No,
but
they
their
got
skill
no
level has
confidence
dropped.
now.
They got zero.
none.
And I don't care what the Crows say. Across the board as a team, they are nowhere near as fit as the opposition. And I'd love to see the GPS numbers for the last 3 weeks.
Yep.
More to the point, the GPS numbers for time on. Because I can tell you this, time on in quarters, the Crows are ranked 16th. Only Melbourne and GWS are worse. In other words, they're getting tighter in quarters, get scored against in time on. How many time on goals were on the weekend? 7.
7.
So, Bone, I don't care what they're telling me. And I got absolutely shot down by the Crows for questioning their fitness.
Yep.
They are nowhere near as fit as the other teams.
No, and I mean, it's obvious by the numbers and certainly their body language and just the way they play. I mean, we looked at each other from the commentary box and could not understand their slow movement of the ball. The difference from one year to the next, it's been massive, and they are not embracing the new game style. Andy Otten will speak to us later on today. We've got to ask him the questions. It's a tough spot for him to be in, but this is not a team that is on board at the moment. They've got some problems.
Their hunger, they're hoping it's okay. Their fitness, they think it's okay. Their game style and skill definitely isn't okay. Here's a question from you to Rory Sloane, speaking to our 5AFL team immediately after the loss. I want to dissect this.
You don't look as a team, not as individuals, but as a team, as hungry and as desperate and as committed. The things, those intangible things that you want from a footy team, as you were last year. Yeah, Tell me I'm wrong.
Well, I hope you're wrong, because I still feel the exact same passion and the drive, certainly myself, and I know there's a lot of others. I reckon the rest of the team still feels the same. And
you reckon, or I mean, and that's it. I'm not doubting you, Rory, because we know what we get, but you reckon. Is it time we knew? Is it time that you knew?
No, we've definitely addressed that sort of stuff throughout the year. And there's no reason why guys aren't as hungry. I mean, the guys are going to be hungry. This is going to burn big time in everyone's guts the next 2 weeks.
Douglas, Sloane, Danger, Rutt and Tully. I can name a couple of others. I reckon any Benny Barbecue that follows the Crows at the moment can name the 6 or 7 that are appearing to be as hungry as what you said to Rory. The rest, for whatever reason, Bone, aren't. For whatever reason, aren't.
And last year it was 20 of the 22, 22 of the 22.
Too little by too few, Bone.
And you can't be successful. You just can't win. I mean, forget everything else. Forget everything else. Unless you can address that, unless you can fix that, and unless they own it at the moment, understand they're not doing it well enough, You can't fix it. You can put a big cross through the season right now.
Sando said he had a bad day in the coach's box. It started before he even stepped in the coach's box. We were critical of selection for the last 2 or 3 weeks, the way the team was set up. The non-selection, the way the team was set up, players they leave, let go, ones plus, half forwards up, emptying out and the whatnot. Man, had more than a bad day. I haven't subscribed to this, but I'm starting to. Maybe Dean Bailey is a bigger loss than we think. And I know that's using it as an excuse. And have a crack at me, Crows fans. 1999 1395 822 30000. But game day is a worry. And it's gradually gotten worse since Walker went down.
There doesn't appear any change. I mean, have the 3 ruckmen worked? Do you think the 3 ruckmen have worked?
Well,
or are 3 covering 2?
That's hit and miss because they're not giving him the coverage that they need.
I don't reckon there's no one to kick the ball to in the forward line. There's no one taking a mark. I mean, sure, the stats on the weekend, I think, for marks inside, I reckon they took 3 in a whole game. I mean, their ability just to find a bloke who can catch the ball, one of the pure basics of the game, inside 50 and have a set shot on goal, it is horrendous. It's horrendous at the moment, and that is just one part.
822 30000. Crows fans, footy fans, have your say. Is that curtains for season 2012? I don't think it is. They've got to win 8 of the last 10. They're 1 game out of the top 4. And how disappointed are you? Huge expectations. They just haven't at this stage delivered because not enough players are in form. And you've got to blame that on the coaching.
If it's not over now, is it over next game if they lose? They have Gold Coast on the Gold Coast.
The last 3 games we've had as elimination finals, we're still giving them hope.
And what's happened?
While they can breathe, they're still alive. They're 1 game out of the 8 bone. So you think it's curtains?
If they lose, look, again, it all depends on what's happening above you. If you're still just a game out, then it's still season on. But, gee, how many can you lose? How many winnable games and elimination finals can you lose? You can lose 3. Can you lose 4 in a row?
No.
I mean, your gut feel says it's going to be really, really hard work at the bare minimum.
Well, we're always loath to name players. Well, I'll tell you what, Daniel Talia did, Bone. Daniel Talia and Oppressor has named players that are below their best.
The running we're putting out there on the weekend, we're getting outworked most games, and you can see that with opposition sides cutting through us and spreading harder than us. And I think that's the reason that I suppose our backs get exposed as well because the ball's coming in there really good. A couple of guys that were playing really good like Radar and even Scotty Thompson haven't been as good as they were last year. So we've got a few senior blokes out of form.
Well, that's hit you right between the eyes. The raw stats the last 2 games, they've conceded 19 goals, 14 to turnovers. 19 goals, 14 the last 2 games to turnovers.
Yep.
Granted, 2 very good teams, but it's making for poor decision-making, coughing the ball up under pressure. Tackled, being out-tackled. Crows cannot break a tackle. They cannot lay a tackle.
Can't lay one here.
And when that happens, it creates all sorts of problems with the method around the ball because you get scunned on the outside. We know that. But work rate and desperation, you can do that. You can fix that up. That is want and desire. But my question again to the Crows is, are your numbers telling you you're as fit as the club's going around? Because they're not telling us that you are.
And if they're not, what can you do about them now? At this stage of the season,
late now.
It's too late. So you've got to, do you expose it as a coach and give the team an out? Or do you just bury your head, don't bring it up, because you bring it up, you're going to create a problem.
Getting scored in time on, other than the North Melbourne game, getting scored in time on, to me, is either want or fitness. You said hunger. 8223 0000. There's still bone, only 1 game out of the top 8.
Right.
And while there's oxygen
still
and they're breathing, there is hope. Port, on the other hand, had the weight of the footy world on their shoulders versus GWS. And I've got to say, they came out absolutely on top. Smashed GWS in every area. Won by 79 points, 75. They were efficient. They were hard at it.
Stephen.
Bone couldn't have done more.
Stephen.
I know it's GWS, but they couldn't have done more.
They were poor.
Who were
With
GWS?
all due respect,
well, I know they were.
They were
But
disgraceful.
Brian, you couldn't have done more than do what you did. And before they got on the plane, we were all saying, who's got the most to lose?
We didn't know the opposition wouldn't turn up. You might as well have played the under-12s.
Sheeds talked it up as a final and they dished that up.
He missed.
I think the Heat and the Bunsen burners got to go more on them.
They were diabolical. I mean, with all due respect, Port Adelaide did everything they could have possibly have done. So they get full credit. The one thing was the opposition was as bad as you will ever see. Non-contact, not involved.
Yep.
Well, we're beaten by the 15-minute mark of the first quarter. Again, tick for Port, but
Well done, Port.
GWS
Back in
stunk.
town. Percentage out of the 8. Their next month, they got Sydney, Collingwood, Essendon and Hawthorn. Need to win 1 or 2 of those to keep their top 8 alive. And so they should. Sydney this weekend, Kurt Tippett's in town. If you were the marketing of Port Adelaide, Bone, if you were the marketing, would you sell that and try and get 35,000 Adelaideans there?
You'd sell it
Bore
absolutely.
fair square where the sun don't shine for Kirtley.
Appeal to the Crows fans to try and come. If they've got a weekend off, they want to go to the footy, appeal. Here's your chance. See if you can engage a couple of Crows fans to come along and support the Sydney bandwagon.
Well, we've got 10 doubles to give away. Kurt Tippett's in town. It's Tippett Gate Affair. If you were Port, you would market that, wouldn't you? Get a huge crowd. It's going to be a great game. 822 300 Port fans, you're back in town. It's your turn to have a real, blow your bags. Blow them.
At the opposition too, because you've got the opposition on their knees.
Correct.
You've got the Crows on their knees. It's your time.
Exactly.